Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's July 30th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and we're almost wrapped this month up. Tomorrow we'll wrap it up, but no chart lessons on Fridays. I'm not doing them on Fridays any longer. Um, it's supposed to rain. It's been raining the last couple of days here. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. If it rains, maybe I'd put something up. I don't know, but I'll probably leave early tomorrow. I've been here late the last couple of days working on some other things, and so probably be no chart lesson. Definitely be no chart lesson tomorrow, but who knows? If I'm bored and it's raining, I may put something up. But anyway, a couple of things I wanted to show you before I get started on today's chart lesson. We had a real steep drop off, and we had what we call a spike and channel down, and we just had a reversal here. There's no real overshoot. Well, you could say that prices closed outside this channel here, but that's not a real convincing close. When I back out, you can see it. But we just reversed here. This is pretty much a reversal. But notice this support across here. No, you won't see me look across the other charts to the previous days very often. I don't know if you can see this. This may not be real easy to see in the video, but here's the daybreaker. This line here is the shows you yesterday. Everything on this side yesterday, and everything from this point on is where the market opened back up at 3:30 or whatever yesterday. So normally you won't look across to that, but when you get down here and you're making new lows, then you have to go look to see where the last important support and resistance is. So that's one time you would do that. And you could see we had a little there yesterday, but I wanted you to see this blue line. There it picks back up, and notice this blue line. Look at this support we've had across here for days now. We haven't been able to get below that blue line. I think it picks back up down here again. There it is again. There it is all across there. Look at that. That is some strong support right there, people. So look at it. We just can't get below that. It's basically the 3200 area is what this is. And we have to go all the way back to mid-July to see prices below that level. And you can see even then it was acting as support and resistance. So that is a very important piece of support right there. So, and that probably had more to do with us bouncing there than anything. The orders are, people know where these areas are, and there's a lot of traders that will just drop their orders in there. And there's a lot of orders that maybe didn't get filled the last time we came back to here, and it bounces real quick, and there were still orders maybe sitting there, and they start to pile up at these places. And so sometimes those will cause a reversal. You won't see this very often, but we just reversed there. There's no real clue that it's coming, nothing. I mean, this is an obvious, very clear two-tiered channel. Prices come up here and go right through it, pull back, make one test, and then they're off. And we really never look back. We've got a break here, and we finally got a new high in place right there, and we're trying to back up. Wouldn't surprise me if this is not our target, and we may continue to push up to that. We may get that before 3. Well, I'm doing this a little earlier today. I'm trying to do these earlier so they're up there not long after the market closes, and I don't have to hang around here so late in the evenings. And a lot of times I'm working on some other personal stuff late in the evenings that I want to get done here while I'm here at the office. So I'm trying to do these earlier. I can't guarantee you. I can't give you any kind of guaranteed time these will come every day. I just do them as best I can when I can and as quick as I can. So just keep that in mind. But a couple other things I wanted to show you is that this will confuse people. Like we traded down here, and notice that strong resistance. There's very strong resistance right there. Look how many times we tested it, but that is not a range. That's just strong resistance. So don't look to buy down here. Sure, you can look to sell here. It's with the trend. It's strong resistance. You're entering with a trend. That's fine, but just don't confuse this as a range. Look, prices are still making lower lows. Each time we come back up here, notice we came back, we made a low. We came back, we made a lower low. We came back, we made an even lower low. and then we couldn't come back anymore because this trend line took over. So don't confuse that with a range. That's just strong resistance in a downtrend. Now look over here. Here's a couple more places. We ran up here. Notice that strong support there in an uptrend. Notice that the highs are getting higher each time pretty much. And then you have a little failed breakout that touches the trend line and look at it, boom, rockets off. If you can get in right here, that's a great setup. And then once again, notice we're still making different highs at different places. This is a little more range-like. The EMA is starting to go sideways and so forth. So this is a little more range-like, but really this is strong support. And notice how your highs are at all different places. It's starting to get consistent out here, so you might could call it a range by that point. But for the most part in here, this is just strong support. It's not really a trading range. So I just wanted to clarify that because people will say, well, I was trading range rules. Well, if we're in a range day and you suddenly start going sideways, then yeah, or if you get in congestion, yeah, trade your range rules. But if you're trending and you get strong support, or even if you do get a true range there, you want to tend to trade with the trend. And that's not 100% either. So be careful going long right into resistance or something like that, because everything I say, a lot of times the most important thing that I say, people never hear them, but I'll make one little comment and somebody will hang on that comment, and then it never fails, within a day or two I get a trade and they say, but you said this in the video. And I'm like, yeah, I said that, but that's not exactly the way sometimes some of this stuff comes across differently than I mean it, or you understand it differently. So just pay attention to some of this stuff, especially this where I'm telling you these are not ranges. So I'll get somebody trying to go short in here saying, well, it was a range. Or they'll be trying to go long over here because they see all that resistance and they think this is a range. And they say, well, I was buying a failed breakout. No, you're not. This is not a range. This is still a downtrend, and that's just strong resistance. So I hope that's clear. I hope I'm just not confusing people anymore, but it's just sometimes I want to kick myself because I'll say something and somebody, something really important, nobody ever hears it. And then I'll say something just off the cuff and somebody hangs on every word of it, and the next thing you know, they're trading something improperly based on something they thought I said that it just didn't quite come across right, or they didn't understand it right, or something of that nature. So this is tough to learn, and it just takes time and a lot of hard work and experience. So if you're struggling, I don't care if you, like I said this yesterday, I don't care if your IQ is 250. How smart you are sometimes is a detriment in this, because you can't use common sense and good sense in trading, because you almost have to be a contrarian. So most people want it, in order to go short, most people want lots of confirmation that we're going down, and so they start trying to get short way down here. But that's about the time you're going to get a two-legged correction, and then they start trying to buy up here, and that's when you need to be getting short. So common sense would tell you sell when it's going down and buy when it's coming up, but you really have to do just the opposite. So that's just one small example of how you have to be a contrarian. But the other thing I wanted to get across, and I'm trying not to make this too long because there's a lot of trades today, but never lose sight of the context. Notice there's some nice trends up here, but really this is a downtrend and a strong one. You need to be concentrating. Don't lose sight of what the overall bias is down here. Look at that EMA. Yeah, there's some bounces here, and we're kind of swinging back and forth, but you're better off not to try to buy. Just look at all these good sales, and you could get runners on just about all of these. So you only had to catch one or two of these trades, and you're done early. So just keep that in mind. Don't lose track of the overall market structure or the context until right here. This was a strong downtrend, and then suddenly it just flip-flopped, and suddenly it's a strong uptrend. Once you realize it's flip-flopped, don't keep trying to sell. Just go with it, whatever it's telling you. You won't see this a lot. Usually you get some kind of clue it's coming. We just didn't have much of a clue today. So let's talk about the trades and get this wrapped up. 7 o'clock came right in here as we're kind of coming up and making this high right here. I think it's right in here in this little correction. But notice this little trend up. You get a break, a new high, and then you make a lower high. The only reason I like this new high, normally I'd say wait on something a little better than that. But look how many times we've turned down across here. So there's some proven resistance, and you got a break and a new high, and this is an engulfing bar. It actually breaks higher, touches it, and turns down and goes right out the other side, and you got plenty of room back to the EMA. I like that trade. The better one's to wait on the lower high where you get this little double test here and another bearish bar, and then off it goes to the races. We come down here and we bounce a little early. You probably should have drawn this here and then just drug it up to see what happens. You really don't have this confirmed yet, but I mean, that's a strong move down. Measure that leg, and when we start down again, look for a measured move at a minimum. And you see we're correcting here. There's a possibility to go short right here. It's a little, notice how we make that eye. You try to go higher once, twice. And we hadn't got to the lows yet. So if you took that trade, I'm okay with it. I did not mark it. It's a little bit congestive. Notice how there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars stacked up there. At least one of them has no body or a real small body. But this breaks higher and gives you that little failed second entry long and then turns and goes out the other side. If you took that trade, I'm okay with it. I'm going to mark it green. But if you took that trade, I'm okay with it. I think you're better off to skip it. But there's some reasons to argue for that trade. And then notice we pull back. And really what's going on here is notice how we shot through the EMA. We did kind of pull back and test it, but a lot of times you'll get the additional test. And then we bounce and go back up to the highs. And notice what prices are doing. They're going from the lows to the highs. We didn't quite get there this time. Back to the highs, back to the lows, back to the highs, and then we kept going this time. And if your prices are not doing that, then your channel is probably wrong. I had that conversation with somebody today. He was wanting to know why I didn't draw it something more like this. But he had it way up here. I think he was actually drawing it off of, I think he actually drew it off of this right here. And it actually was maybe right in there. And then I think because it fit right there on those two. So you got 2 bounces off of that line, and then you got nothing up here. Prices are turning right here for a reason. That's because there's a trend line right there, and there's nothing up here. And even when we get to it, it doesn't even hold. We pull back a little bit, but they were pulling back to test this trend line after they broke out, and they'll probably take a retest of a low. It's not because of this line right here. So your trend line should fit and prices should turn up off the lows and down off the highs. This is just support and resistance, and it's slanted rather than just being sideways. So I hope that's clear. For some reason that line looks goofy there. Yeah, that's close enough. But anyway, you may go short there, and then you get 2 legs back up. So a second entry short right there at the trend line, and it takes 3 touches. You get your first 2 swings, and then your third touch confirms it. So that confirmed this trend line when it took off right there on a second entry short. Go short right there. You would have got a runner, could have ridden this all the way down. Then it tries to go, then you get a lower high right here off of that little short-term trend line. Then you get a failed second entry long that comes off the main trend line again. It doesn't matter what your signal bar looks like there. And we actually come back one more time. And this one it's just a first entry short, but it's at the main key entry point, and we've turned down there multiple times. And so you may take that trade. it's not a perfect setup. You really want to wait on the second entry. We don't get it here, but look how many times we've turned down there, and we're still making lower highs and lower lows. Then of course you draw your trend line and you get a lower high here. Again, I marked it green. You're getting near the lows of the day. There's still plenty of room there, but you know, it's just, and you're looking for a measured leg, so you still got a long way to go, but I just think it's a little bit aggressive. So I'm gonna mark it green. And notice how we bounced down here back to that trend line, but we kept going lower. You don't want to be entering this far away from the EMA way down here. And then of course, what do? We bounce. Where do you expect prices to go? Back to here. But look what happens. You get this trend line coming up, you get a break, you move to a new high, and you break higher. I'm not sure if this broke higher first or not. It could have broke lower and traded up and then came back down. But either way, when it was coming back on the final time and came out, you could have gone short one tick below. That's a little engulfing bar. And you could have even waited on this one, although you don't have much room left back to that EMA. And I'd probably want enough room back because we just pushed back through that EMA, and we may just be coming back to test the EMA and maybe even the midline, and we could bounce higher again. So you just want plenty of room there. You actually get a failed second entry long here, but that looks congestive and it just came off that midline. There's probably enough room to get out, but I'm just not crazy about it. This is just too congested for any of these entries. This one breaks higher and turns down, but look at that support across there. It works, but it's starting to get, you know, it's hard now to know what's going on because you're expecting prices to come back up here, but they're not, and you're getting a lot of congestion. So there's a lot of indecision here. It's just hard to know what's going on. So whenever you don't know what's going on, don't do anything. And look how long you had to wait. You took this trade at just before 9 o'clock, and that one's green. The last really good trade was at 8:40 maybe, and you don't get another well, you have one in the middle here, but other than that one, you don't get another one until 10 o'clock. You got to be patient, and you got to know what's going on, and you got to wait. And it's just right in here, you just don't know what's going on. You would expect prices to come back here, but they're struggling to go in either direction. So there's a lot of indecision there. So just sit tight and do nothing. And then we run up. You try to go short once. You try to go short twice. You could think about going long there, but again, the trend is down. The trend line, this trend channel is still in play. Yeah, there's a little close outside, but it ain't much of one, so you can't rely on that. So I think you're better off just to wait. And it's hard to do, but you got to wait. And you run up, and then I don't have this trend line on here, but this just runs straight down. And notice you're making a lower high right there. It pushes through the EMA and the midline pulls back. And you're still, at this point, you're still in the downtrend. You're still looking for prices to go lower. So that's a good spot. There's a failure right there, but you're going short at the very low of this whole move. And you can see that looks like one move. It's just too dangerous because we're probably going to bounce back to the EMA any second. And instead, this thing just reverses. But notice what it does. It pushes up here. First entry, pushes up. Second entry, you got two legs up. Look at that trend line working up through there. It pulls back to it, basically to the EMA. It fails. So just take that trade. You know, you're only looking for a scalp. But guess what? You would have got a runner on this, and you probably could have ridden this thing way on up if you wanted. So, and then notice how we start bouncing off the midline. I talked about this yesterday. You don't want to buy this midline. You might buy it when we push through and pull back when you think prices are still headed to the other side. Notice that's what's happening here. We pull up, we push, we come back and test it a couple times and then go on up. And so there is a little double test here. You might take this trade. It's one you might take, but it's just a first entry, and I'm not crazy about them on a midline. But this is kind of what you want to look like if you're trying to trade a midline. You want to see it hold a few different times there before you trust buying that. Because normally if it comes off here, it's coming back to here. And when it comes off here, it's going back to here. That's the expectation. And I don't know what's going on in my throat, but I'm suddenly losing my voice here. My throat's a little I got a little frog in my throat and I can't seem to clear it out, so I apologize if my voice sounds funny. It feels funny here. But you may take that trade because it's just a little double test. It pushed through and it tested it. Plus, that's the first break of this trend line. There's a little trend channel working up there. You can see that. It's the first break. Plus, we're probably going to here, so you might expect it to bounce. And that's what it does. And you get a little failed second entry long here. There's actually a second entry long here, and there's a engulfing bar. It breaks lower, turns up. I don't really like this one because we just came off the high. You can see that's all one move, and that's going to be the first break. So we're probably going to pull back down. So you'll probably get a better entry than that regardless. So notice there's two legs back. And then you can't really trust the second entry because we're back underneath. But when it makes this high or low, now you can trust it at the midline and off it goes. Still doesn't get back to the highs though. But notice that support. We talked about this a minute ago. We're still making higher highs almost each time, but we're staying steady across there. And this is just two legs back is what this is to the midline and the EMA. Fairly bullish bar. You may take that one. This one's close to even being green. But this is a pretty strong trend, and everything's even been up in the upper half. So there's a good chance we're going higher, but it doesn't. You would have got your scalp, but it comes on back, bounces off the trend line, and off it goes again. Unfortunately, you don't get a setup here. Your signal bar is just not good enough. It's a shame because that's a great move. And if you had a good setup here, by all means, take it. But there's your signal bar. The signal bar always makes the lowest point in the swing. It's too bearish. And you don't want to use an inside bar. So there's no chance to enter there on my chart, and you miss that one. Then you come back, you get a first entry, and then right at the midline EMA, you get a second entry. And this one definitely breaks lower, turns, and goes up. Just go long right there. Even if you'd have waited for that to finish and go long, it still was a good trade. You would have had to ride this out, which would be hard for most of us. Most of us would give up on that. And then finally it runs on up, and you just don't really get a chance. You don't want to go long here. There's actually a failed second entry short, but you want it to be closer to the EMA than that. And if nothing else, on the other side of the midline. And notice it doesn't go very far, and then the bottom falls out. But notice that trend working down. You get your close outside, new low, and then you try to go lower twice, and it fails. That's a higher low when we're looking for it to make a new high anyway. And then it just starts going sideways. And again, it's hard to know what's going on. We should make a retest of the high, but we're not doing it. We can't get through this support. So it's really getting a little more difficult to know what's going on. So you got to have a really good setup. We finally come back and test that low, and that's a triple test, or at least a double test. And you make a higher low, but it's no good, and then you make a failed second entry short. So if we break higher there, it's probably going to shoot on up, and that's what it does. And actually, there's a second entry long right here, but it's an inside bar. That's the reason I didn't mark it, especially that late in the day. So notice that new high, first entry, second entry. But if you had some little different setup and you had a good second entry long there, take it. Mine doesn't set up properly. And that got us through the day. So pretty good trading day. Lots of runners in here, both down and up. And I'd classify this as a reversal day, really, because there's no break of the trend line and retest or any of that stuff. It just tested that original support that's been holding since mid-July, a couple of weeks now, and it takes off. And so there was a lot of people waiting on that price to start buying. And then we just kind of petered out going into the day here. So, but yeah, it was a pretty good trading day if you're patient and you realize that, hey, there's some kind of transition going on here. I don't know exactly what's happening. I'm just going to sit and wait. And that's what you have to do to be a good trader. You got to be able to say, hey, I don't know what's going on here. If you don't know what's going on and you take a trade, you're a gambler. And guess what happens to gamblers in this business? They all lose their money eventually, and they go broke and they leave. You cannot survive gambling in this business. So when you don't know what's going on, even if you got to sit for an hour, don't do anything but just sit till you do know what's going on. And you'll thank me for it, because you'll be a lot better trader. So, of course, you can't be the other extreme where you're so scared that you do know what's going on and you're so scared you can't take a trade, because there's a lot of people like that. They tell me they do great on simulator, and then they get on here and they can't take a trade. And when they do, they're wrong, because they're trying to be too conservative. They think they're being more conservative by waiting instead of entering up here like I talked about earlier. They're waiting for proof, and it gets down here and then they're too late. So you can't be scared to enter either. But don't enter if you don't know what's going on. Just sit tight till you do, or get up and take a break and come back and try to reevaluate and see if maybe it makes more sense. But I'm going to wrap it up. This is going to do it for the week. We'll be back again to do it Monday. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.